there, friends. Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and Arloth and I are here today to talk about some other really fantastic books that we really loved in 2021. So last time we talked about our favorite books, right? The books that we just absolutely loved more than anything else, the top 5. But like I said before, it was really, really hard to narrow it down to only 5. I had a really hard time with that because I read so many amazing books last year, and I really want you guys to experience all these great books as well. So this week, I thought, let's do a follow-up to the top books of 2021 and do like an honorable mentions, right? So these are going to be like the runners up. They're the books that I absolutely loved and thought were fantastic, but they just didn't make it into the top 5. But if I had done a top 10, they absolutely would have made it. So I've got 3 more books that I think are absolutely worth your time. They're super amazing. So let's get started with them. So the first one is The Bookshop of Dust and Dreams, and this one is by Mindy Thompson. Now, this book had a lot of really cool things in it that I just absolutely love reading about. The first one is a magical bookstore. I know, a magical bookstore. Can you imagine that? There are not too many other things I can think of that I would love to experience more than going into a magical bookstore. So this story has a magical bookstore. It's set during World War II, which I really love, and it's got a main character whose name is Poppy, who really learns a lot of life lessons and comes into her own. So these are all things that just tumble together to make an amazing story. So Poppy, like I said, is living with her family and in their bookstore in 1944 during World War II, and they learn that her older brother's best friend has died in the war. So the brother really wants to use the bookstore magic, like the magic that runs the bookstore, and try to go back in time to rescue his friend, which is a big, big no-no. So Poppy has to try to decide whether she wants to be there for her brother and help her brother or do what's right, because the whole world is at stake if he abuses this bookstore magic. But it's a really hard decision. And this book has a lot of tough choices in it, but it's also really fun and exciting, and the description of this magical bookstore was phenomenal. I loved it so much, and I really wish it was real, although it could be. We never know, right? So that is The Bookshop of Dust and Dreams by Mindy Thompson. Yep. Okay, the next book is, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by it because it is a big book, but I promise you're gonna read through it fast. It doesn't feel like a long story at all. And that is The Last Windwitch by Jennifer Adam. Just look at this cover. Let's take a minute to look at this beautiful cover for a second. I love this story. And like I said, it's a bit of a thick book, right? I think it might be close to 400 pages, just about 400 pages, but that's okay. Like I said, I sped through this book when I read it for the first time, and I really loved it a lot. I thought it was phenomenal. And this is just a really classic fantasy story about this young girl named Brita who has this, she's training to be a witch with her mentor, and there's an evil queen that is trying to take over the world, and she has to tap into her powers that so when she's training, she's not very good, right? She keeps messing up the spells and making a big mess of things, but she's got a different kind of power that she doesn't even know about yet, and she has to try to use that to harness the evil queen. So like I said, it's a standard fantasy book, but it was really, really good, and it was so well written. That was the thing that really drew me to this book, was how well written it was. Sometimes fantasy books, especially if they are fantasy books that have a lot of the classic elements of fantasy, like this one does, like an evil lord or queen or something that they're trying to take over, and a young hero who has powers they don't know about. Those are things that come up in a lot of different fantasy books, and sometimes it can feel old and stale, right? Sometimes it feels like you're just reading the same book over and over again, but not this one. This one really stood out. The writing was fantastic. It was a great story. I was super caught up in it. It had a lot of action in it, had a lot of adventure, and I was really rooting for Brita this whole time. The Last Windwitch, Jennifer Adams. Give it a try. Okay, last but not least, this was originally in my top 5, and then I had to move it out once I read the new Kate DiCamillo book. But As soon as I read it, I loved it so much, and I knew it was going to be one of my favorites for the year. And this is called The Lost Wonderland Diaries by J. Scott Savage. The Lost Wonderland Diaries. And you can tell from the cover, there is a lot going on here in this story, right? So this is about two young heroes called Celia and Tyron, and basically they end up discovering that C.S. Lewis, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, had these 4 journals that actually was where he wrote about his experiences in Wonderland. So this story is saying, hey, Alice in Wonderland is actually real. He actually fell into Wonderland and then wrote about his experiences there. So, which is a really cool concept. I love that thought. So both these kids end up getting sucked into the Wonderland, but it's not the Wonderland that you may remember. There's some different things. My favorite difference is that the Cheshire Cat is a robot. And you can see him right here on this cover. He's a robotic cat. And he's just as mysterious and a little bit creepy as the one that you know from the story and in the movies. What I also really loved about this book is that the characters are really well defined, and Tyron here is dyslexic and he has a really hard time with words, but he's a math whiz, and then vice versa. Celia is really not that great at math, so it takes the two of them and both of their weaknesses and their strengths together to solve the puzzles of this world and to triumph. And I love that. I love the idea of working together, and that sometimes it's not just all on your own, right? Sometimes you need a friend or a family member or somebody else to help you along the way. And that is the best part of the story, I think, is that these two start off and they're not friends. They're practically strangers, actually, in the beginning of the story, but they learn to work together, and it's amazing. The Lost Wonderland Diaries. And it's especially great if you like Alice in Wonderland, as I do. It's a great little nod to that. Well, those are the runners-up, the honorable mentions of the best books of 2021. Like I said, they are so fantastic and amazing. I just couldn't fit them into the top 5, so I wanted to do a special segment just on them. But they're absolutely amazing and definitely worth reading and checking out. And if you are interested in them, please feel free to come get them from Farmington Community Library. Also, please give this video a like if you did like watching it, and also thank you for watching it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, my friends, and have a wonderful rest of the day.